42 incredible discoveries that expose unexpected wonders in space. Prepare to be amazed. Laura stood at the front of her classroom, surrounded by a sea of blank faces. The fluorescent lights above flickered slightly, mirroring the inner turmoil that swelled within her. These were the moments when she felt the weight of invisibility press down on her shoulders, as if she were just another piece of furniture in the room. Black holes, she began, but she could already see the disinterest reflected in their eyes. She felt an urge to shout, to shake them awake, but instead, she swallowed her passion, burying it beneath the daily grind of lesson plans. Unappreciated, she drifted through each day, replaying a stagnant cycle. Inspire, but go unnoticed. The thrill of science, especially astronomy, the only subject where the universe felt just within her reach, tugged at her heart. Yet each day in this small Ohio town stripped away layers of her identity. Surrounded by peers who derided her dreams, she often questioned her worth. What did it mean to want something so grand, to stare at the cosmos and see herself reflected in the stars, when the world around her only acknowledged the mundane? Then came the NASA scientist, a wildfire igniting smoldering embers within her. His stories of stellar phenomena rang in her ears, urging her to uncover more about herself. After he left, Laura delved into her family history, unearthing an astonishing truth. Her father, a talented astrophysicist, had been relegated to the shadows by a society that dismissed his brilliance. The realization filled her with a mingling of pride and anguish, a flame sparked by his forgotten legacy, engulfing her fears and igniting her passion anew. She poured herself into research, unearthing secrets of galaxy formations that felt like second nature. Hope surged within her, yet doubt loomed larger than ever. Before she could revel in her findings, an overwhelming darkness took hold. Colleagues dismissed her theories as mere whims, labeling her as just a teacher rather than a scientist. The echoes of their skepticism pricked at her, threatening to drown her newfound ambitions. But with each step into the academic ring, she felt a calling, a demand to honor her father's dreams, a voice whispering that ambition did not require permission. Gritting her teeth, she knew she had to fight. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With an international conference on the horizon, Laura's heart raced with anticipation and dread. Her husband encouraged her quietly, validating her fears while reminding her of the work she'd done. Yet as the date closed in, a storm brewed. The whispers of a powerful aerospace company reached her ears, a chilling reminder of the systemic resistance against women in science. They sought to diminish her credibility, to bury her work. Would her contributions be silenced before they even had a voice? As Laura lingered in her backyard, gazing into the vastness of the sky, uncertainty shadowed her heart. The cosmos seemed both inviting and unforgiving. She stood at the precipice of her father's dreams and her own fervent aspirations, the pressure building like a supernova. Would she send forth her voice among the stars, or would she remain lost in silence? In that fierce yearning, the stakes had never felt higher. Standing in the dusky light of her backyard, Laura inhaled deeply, trying to quell the internal storm. The questions swirled like the planets she studied. Would she allow others to define her journey? The whispers from her colleagues echoed in her mind, reminding her of the barriers she faced. Yet, beneath that weight of doubt, a flicker of determination sparked. Laura felt a pull towards her research, as if the universe itself were beckoning her to engage in the fight. Every star and constellation she had ever studied seemed to echo the importance of their existence against the darkness of space. What was a black hole, a supernova, if not a manifestation of struggle and rebirth? The fire of her father's legacy ignited a fierce resolve to assert herself in a world clamoring to mute her voice. Determined, she reached for her laptop, fingers poised over the keyboard. She began drafting her presentation for the conference, molding her findings into a narrative that would not only show the brilliance of galaxy formations but also the strength born from her familial ties. Could she frame her discoveries not just within the framework of science, but as a personal testament to resilience? Each word was infused with purpose, crafting a message that felt substantive, a declaration that she belonged. Yet, she could not shake off the gnawing anxiety that accompanied her efforts. The looming presence of the aerospace company throbbed in her mind, a constant reminder of the potential sabotage waiting to derail her. As she sifted through her findings for evidence to back her claims, she stumbled upon something unexpected. A series of anomalies in cosmic structures that had previously gone unnoticed. They seemed trivial to some, but under scrutiny, they told a story of perseverance, of stellar formations that defied the odds, much like her own journey. This discovery sliced through her doubts. The more she examined the data, the more she saw her own struggles reflected within the stardust. If the universe could produce such magnificent feats against adversity, why couldn't she? A surge of confidence coursed through her, igniting her composure. If she had the universe as her ally, surely she could weather the storm of disapproval. But as she solidified her presentation, a shadow lurked at the edge of her progress. The day of the conference approached with stark reality, and the whispers became louder, more menacing. They echoed of the aerospace company's skepticism, threatening to dismiss her contributions as mere distractions. Did she truly have what it took to fight for her voice? Would anyone listen? In a moment of resolve, Laura picked up the phone. With trembling hands, she dialed the NASA scientist, her unexpected inspiration. He answered, engulfed with enthusiasm yet grounding her with truth. Your voice matters, Laura. Don't let anyone dictate what science you belong to. That call became a turning point. She felt fortified to confront the judgments awaiting her at the conference. She could no longer abide by the labels imposed on her. The uncertainty that clung to her began to lift, replaced by the conviction that not only could she stand amongst her peers, but she would stand out. With only days left before the conference, Laura realized it was time to put her newfound determination to the test. She would walk into that auditorium as a scientist, a daughter, and a woman determined not to dissolve into the background. The moment of truth loomed, thick with tension. As she rehearsed her speech, words flowing like a cosmic river, she couldn't help but wonder how she would face the inevitable confrontations. The time had come to face not just the doubts of others, but her own relentless craving for recognition and respect. Would she rise to the occasion or crumble under the weight of expectation? Laura sat at her desk, her eyes flitting over her presentation notes, each bullet point a combination of scientific rigor and personal experience woven together. The days were dwindling, and the weight of her decision loomed larger. She questioned whether the notion of standing in front of the audience, unafraid to share her intricate narrative, was as formidable as the black holes she studied. The pressure mounted. Could one presentation truly change the course of her career? As the clock ticked relentlessly, her thoughts spiraled into the uncharted territories of self-doubt. What if the audience saw her passion as naivete? What if the aerospace company successfully discredited her findings, undermining all she had fought to achieve? Those questions loomed like dark matter, unseen but surely present, exerting their gravitational pull on her confidence. But then she recalled the words of the NASA scientist, "Your voice matters, Laura." The phrase became a lifeline, replaying in her mind. As she rehearsed the speech aloud, her voice wavered at first but gradually transformed into a stronger cadence, echoing her willpower. This was not just about sharing her research. It was about claiming her space in a predominantly male-dominated field. Each insight she planned to share carried the essence of resilience, reflecting not only her discoveries but the story of her father's legacy. With renewed focus, she dove back into the data. Those anomalies she had unearthed seemed to beckon further exploration. She found herself engrossed in the patterns, weaving through the cosmic narratives, envisioning how each piece connected not solely to the universe, but to her own existence. She envisioned the twinkling stars as embodiments of her struggles, their brilliance untainted by the darkness surrounding them. In the days leading up to the conference, Laura shifted gears. She sought feedback from trusted peers, those who would provide constructive criticism rather than succumb to the familiar echoes of skepticism. Each conversation chipped away at her insecurities, illuminating her strengths and reinforcing the message she longed to convey. She was met with affirmation. They reminded her of the gravity of her work and the impact it could have, much like the celestial bodies she studied. On the eve of the conference, anxiety surged like a tempest, but it was overshadowed by a growing sense of conviction. In that moment, she confronted an internal battle. Should she allow herself to be cowed by fear of judgment, or would she face it head-on with the courage of her convictions? As she lay awake, visions of the stage began to swirl in her mind, merging with dreams of distant galaxies. Laura's heart raced as she imagined a scenario where voices of doubt rang against her own, where misconceptions were confronted and rebutted. The countdown to her moment of truth enveloped her. She realized that to truly rise, she had to embrace the very vulnerabilities that had haunted her. Then Laura made a decision. She would not present mere data. Instead, she would tell a story, a tapestry of her life, woven into the very fabric of cosmic phenomena. The next words she would speak to an audience that may not yet believe in her were a testament to the indomitable spirit she inherited from her father. With the presentation unfurling in her mind like a cosmic map, she felt the weight of anticipation meld into purpose. She understood now. This wasn't just a presentation. This was an unveiling of her journey, one that had miraculously conjoined her path with the cosmos. The moment it was time to step on stage, she inhaled deeply, recalling the swirling galaxies that illustrated her struggles. With the microphone poised in her hand, she felt herself transforming, ready to confront not only skepticism but also the inner critic that had followed her. As she took that first step toward the podium, Laura's heart pounded, and a chilling realization dawned on her. She was standing at the precipice of a confrontation that would shape her identity forever. Would she successfully break through the confines of doubt, both within and without? The bright stage lights enveloped Laura, blinding her momentarily, and, for a split second, she felt as if she were floating within a black hole, lost in the unfamiliar void before her. The audience's faces were shadows, silhouettes submerged in a sea of expectations. She could feel the electricity in the air, a mixture of anticipation and skepticism, and she willed herself to focus. Taking a deep breath, she felt the weight of her father's legacy riding on her shoulders. This was not just about the science. It was about the stories embedded in those equations and graphs. Her hands gripped the podium tightly as she centered herself, preparing for the first spoken words to break through the murmur of the crowd. "Good morning," she began, her voice shaky but growing steadier as she continued. "Today, I want to take you on a journey through the mysteries of our universe and the personal odyssey that led me here." The narrative she had crafted seemed to unraveling, and she hoped it would entice her audience, pulling them into the intricate tapestry she had been weaving for weeks. As her presentation unfolded, she navigated her research with sincerity and passion, revealing the nuanced intricacies of dark matter and the anomalous data she had painstakingly compiled. Each statistic was no longer just a number. It was a voice, a memory, echoing the persistence that propelled her forward. She spoke of her father's influence, the nights spent stargazing, while he explained the universe's secrets, to her moments that shaped her belief in science and in herself. But as she scanned the audience, she noticed furrowed brows and folded arms in some corners. Doubt crept back in, wrapping itself around her like a cold embrace. What if they dismissed her as merely another hopeful outlier? She pressed on, diving deeper into her analysis and offering her interpretation of the data that had drawn such skepticism from the aerospace company. She presented well-founded theories, buttressing them with passion, but the glance of one board member caught her eye, a particularly potent blend of disdain mixed with disbelief. For a second, the invasive doubt morphed into a visceral realization. This wasn't simply an academic challenge but a trial of her very essence. Why else had she prepared so fervently if not to draw upon her experiences? She felt the urge to pivot, to confront the potential naysayers directly. Instead of retreating into the safety of empirical data, Laura seized this moment. "Let me share a deeper truth," she proclaimed, her voice resonating against the walls. "The universe has these dark patches we can't see, just as I have had my own shadows. It's in confronting this darkness that we unearth the light behind it." The audience shifted, heads leaning forward, attending to the emotional weight that intertwined with her scientific exploration. A few faces softened, and she felt the gravitational shift in the room, a slight release from the initial tension. She illustrated her key findings with bright visuals, narratives of discovery, and breakthroughs. Discrediting her own doubts transformed into defending her revelations. With each piece, she allowed her vulnerabilities to flow, understanding now that fragility was not weakness. It was human. As she approached the conclusion, Laura felt a burgeoning confidence radiating from within. The burden of anxiety gave way to empowerment. Her final words lingered like a comet trailing through night. "When we pursue the mystery of the cosmos, we must also acknowledge our own depths of doubt. This interplay between light and darkness is where true discovery resides." A palpable silence followed her last sentence. Laura stood still and, in that moment, sensed the blend of fears and hopes from the audience encapsulated within the atmosphere. But as she stepped down from the podium, buoyed by the applause that began to swell, she felt the board members' steely gaze still tracking her. This wasn't the end. She had ignited curiosity, yet uncertainty still shimmered on the horizon. What awaited her in the aftermath of this presentation? Would her message break through the final barriers? Laura prepared herself for whatever confrontation hovered ahead, a resolved determination to embrace the challenges that would ultimately shape her voice and her career. The stakes had changed, and the narrative of her journey had only just begun. The applause died down, but the moment felt far from victorious. As Laura stepped off the stage, she could feel the weight of the board member's gaze, a palpable reminder that her journey was only beginning. Her heart raced as she navigated through the crowd, pressing hands and exchanging nods, yet sensing the looming shadow of judgment clinging to her like an unwelcome guest. "Laura." The voice was robust and unapologetic. It sliced through the chatter, sending a shiver down her spine. It was Dr. Matthews, the skeptic, the prominent figure whose opinion held weight in this world. She turned to face him, a mixture of determination and trepidation swirling within her. This was the confrontation she had sensed would come. "That was quite a presentation," he acknowledged, his expression inscrutable. "But I wonder, was it more a plea for understanding rather than a presentation of solid scientific evidence?" Her instinct was to fire back, to defend the authenticity of her research, but she took a breath, remembering the poise she had managed to muster on stage. "You're correct in that I shared personal truths, but isn't that part of what makes the scientific story compelling? People are not just data points. They are driven by passion, commitment by stories. The data needs context." He raised an eyebrow, amusement dancing at the corners of his mouth. "Context won't save you when it's time to parse through hard evidence. Passion doesn't win grants or publications. What's your plan moving forward?" The question lingered in the air. A gauntlet dropped at her feet. What was her plan? Her mind raced through the myriad paths she could take. Further research, a deeper dive into the existing theories, collaborations with other scientists, or even reevaluating her own methods. She was grateful for the challenge, for the invitation to respond not only to Dr. Matthews but also to herself. "Expanding my data collection is essential," she stated, finding her voice gaining strength. "I'll take this opportunity to engage with critics, to collaborate, to create a transparent dialogue around my findings. I'm not interested in simply defending my work. I want to refine it." His expression shifted, the trace of skepticism replaced by something akin to respect, or perhaps curiosity. That's the spirit. But know this: the path to validation is littered with doubt, and the voices of dissent will only grow louder. Laura nodded, feeling her resolve crystallizing. The ambiguity of doubt, while intimidating, was also an opportunity for growth. She was ready to confront the naysayers, to dissect her own work and explore its limitations, not just the triumphs. "Bring on the doubts," she declared, surprising herself with the fierceness of her words. I'll turn them into fuel for my journey. With that, she walked away, each step infused with newfound determination. The conversation had shifted something within her. She understood that every obstacle could lead to deeper comprehension not only of her research but of herself. After a fleeting moment of appreciation for her surroundings, Laura's gaze landed on a small group of graduate students discussing dark matter theory animatedly nearby. An idea blossomed. Engaging with young, fresh minds in the field could spark innovative methodologies for her study. She approached them, introducing herself, and invited them to the project. The prospect of collaboration ignited a thrill in her. It turned out that fresh perspectives often bore the justifications and criticisms she had feared. Perhaps her uncertainties were leading her, nudging her toward uncharted territories. But in the back of her mind, the board member's earlier expression replayed indifference transformed into scrutiny. The stakes kept rising, and with every decision she made, a new layer of complexity emerged, threatening to expose her vulnerabilities as well as her strengths. As the students eagerly accepted her proposal, Laura felt apprehensive excitement coursing through her. How would this partnership evolve? What could they uncover together? The challenges ahead beckoned, their shadows laced with promise and risk. She took a deep breath. The path unfolding before her felt both familiar and daunting, and with it, the realization that every choice would define part of her legacy. What revelations lay in the upcoming research? Who else would question her assumptions, and how would she respond? The horizon shimmered with uncertainty, and Laura was ready to confront it head-on. The following days swept into a whirlwind of meetings and brainstorming sessions. Laura found herself deep in discussions with the graduate students, who were brimming with enthusiasm and curiosity. Their wild ideas, once foreign and daunting, began to merge with her own systematic approach. Slowly, she realized that their unchecked optimism filled in the gaps her self-doubt had carved in her plans. Among the students, Sam stood out not just for his intellect but for his ability to question the status quo. He directly reminded Laura of her younger self, eager to challenge authority. During one session, he suggested they explore an unconventional approach to analyze their data, envisioning a method that wasn't strictly quantitative but intertwined with qualitative insights. His idea teased at something that had been simmering within her, the need to break free from conventional research bounds that had circumscribed her own work. What if we conducted focus groups with people affected by our findings? He proposed, his eyes sparkling with excitement. Their realities can provide layers of understanding that numbers alone cannot capture. Laura felt a tremor of possibility. Engaging directly with those impacted by her research could lead to profound insights that would transcend mere academic acknowledgement. Yet, anxiety nipped at the edges of her thoughts. Would this approach draw more skepticism from her peers? I worry about straying too far from the scientific method, she admitted, catching the thread of hesitation in her voice. But you're already seeking validation outside the traditional parameters, Sam replied. Embracing a broader scope could be more compelling, especially in the public eye. Look at their reactions. They need passion behind the numbers. His words resonated with her, igniting an internal struggle. Should she risk the integrity of her work to explore this new avenue? After a sleepless night, she found clarity. If she truly wanted to refine her research, she needed to embrace change. The initial desire for validation, while natural, could not stifle her curiosity or the genuine desire to contribute. As she outlined the new approach during their next meeting, excitement surged within the group. They traded ideas on how to incorporate narratives from individuals into their analysis. The collaborative environment energized Laura, fortifying her belief that innovation lay in embracing diverse perspectives. Yet as plans burgeoned, Dr. Matthews' warning echoed in her mind, casting a shadow that dampened her buoyancy. With each passing day, that cloud of skepticism loomed larger, complicating her newfound enthusiasm. Doubts crept into her discussions with the students, and she found herself grappling with the fear of public humiliation, a fear that had once been a secret, but now threatened to cloud her judgment. One afternoon, armed with a preliminary survey designed to engage potential focus group participants. Laura sent out invitations to notable scholars and laypersons within the affected communities. She could feel her heart pound as each click sent her invitation racing into the digital void. Would they respond? Responses trickled in, and she couldn't shake the sense that the breakthrough she sought might well hinge on their engagement. As the first replies churned in, some praising the initiative while others raised cautious eyebrows about the validity of her data, Laura faced a wave of conflicting emotions. Was she exposing herself to unnecessary jeopardy? Conversations with her colleagues soon followed. Some praised her daring approach while others voiced hesitance. Tension began to ebb and flow between enthusiasm for the new direction and a stark reminder of the scrutiny she now faced. As questions swirled around her intentions, Laura stood at a crossroads, consuming her thoughts as she mulled over the implications of her choices. What if she managed to integrate traditional scientific rigor with a humanistic approach, only to be met with rejection from the very people she wished to impress? The stakes felt higher than ever, an addictive gamble on her reputation. Amidst these rising pressures, Laura's resolve wavered briefly, but it was the moment a former mentor reached out to her a note that ended with, "Trust the process and your instincts," that reignited her courage. Taking a deep breath, she prepared for her next challenge. Not just refining her research but also preparing for confrontation when she presented her evolving ideas to the board, including Dr. Matthews. Would she be ready to defend her innovative yet controversial path? They were about to enter a tempest of scrutiny, and one thing was becoming increasingly clear. Laura had tied her fate to courage, collaboration, and an unapologetic thirst for discovery. What unforeseen complexities awaited her in her presentation? And would she have the grit to face the critics armed with a bold new vision? Laura stood in front of the large conference room, her heart racing as she adjusted the slides on her laptop. The room was filled with a mix of her colleagues and board members, including Dr. Matthews, who watched her intently. The air felt thick, heavy with expectations and skepticism, and she could sense the weight of their judgment pressing on her shoulders. As she began her presentation, she felt a tremor of nerves flutter through her. Each bullet point on her slides represented not just facts and figures, but the culmination of her journey, a journey marked by indecision, collaboration, and a thrust into uncharted waters. She spoke passionately about the integration of qualitative insights, the focus groups, and the engagement with those whose lives were affected by her research. "Data is not just numbers," she articulated, her voice gaining strength. "It tells a story, one that transcends mere statistics. Engaging with the community adds a layer of depth that traditional methods overlook." Yet, for every nod of understanding, she could feel the doubt casting long shadows, especially coming from Dr. Matthews. As he leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, a subtle frown creased his forehead. "Interesting," he interrupted as Laura navigated through her arguments. "But how can we defend a methodology that defies the standards of scientific rigor? Isn't there a risk that this could dilute the credibility of your findings?" His words struck like lightning, sending a jolt through Laura. The tension in the room shifted, thickening as colleagues exchanged glances. In that moment, she felt exposed, teetering on the precipice of invalidation. Was she risking everything for a vision that could crumble under scrutiny? Taking a moment to breathe, Laura recalled her mentor's advice to trust her instincts. "Every methodology has its limitations, Dr. Matthews," she replied, her voice steadying. "But the stories behind the data, the lived experiences, provide essential context. If we wish to impact policy and practice, we must bridge that gap." The air crackled with energy as she spoke, igniting a spark of belief in her innovative approach. "Perhaps you're proposing a trade-off between empirical data and narrative richness?" Another colleague piped up, intrigued. Laura seized the opportunity. "Not a trade-off, but a symbiosis. All we need is to expand our scope of inquiry. This is not about dismissing numerical data. It's about enriching it. Imagine the policies we could influence, informed by both robust numbers and the poignant realities they represent." As she felt the rhythm of the dialogue changing, a wave of confidence washed over her. They were no longer at odds. They were engaged in a crucial conversation. Laura began to relax, her anxiety dissipating as her ideas resonated. Yet, a flicker of doubt returned as she glanced at Dr. Matthews once more. His demeanor remained guarded, a mix of skepticism and consideration. Would he, at the end of the day, still consider her proposals too radical? The session dragged on, questions revolving around data integrity, potential biases in qualitative approaches, and the feasibility of executing such methods effectively. Laura had trained herself meticulously, anticipating these challenges, but each inquiry reminded her that the stakes were high. As the session wound down, she sensed a shift. Some colleagues began to discuss collaborations with those from affected communities, inspired by her perspective, validating the essence of her innovative approach. But still, Dr. Matthews remained non-committal, his silence a lingering doubt. When the room concluded, Laura felt a complex mixture of accomplishment and uncertainty. She had managed to present her evolving ideas, yet the real test lay ahead. What would be the board's final decision? How much of a risk would they take on her bold vision? As she left the conference room, Laura caught a glimpse of Sam waiting outside, a broad smile lighting up his face. "You were incredible in there. They can't ignore what you've proposed," he affirmed, infusing her with a renewed energy. His belief felt reassuring, yet the questions were insistent, echoing in her mind. Would the innovative approach be met with acceptance or rejection? The tension was far from resolved, and her journey was far from over. With her resolve rekindled, she headed to her office, preparing herself for the decisions that lay ahead. Would she be able to resonate with those who still doubted her path? Or would this bold vision unravel under pressure? What awaited her next was not just a decision, but a confrontation with her deepest fears. Could she stand firm against the very foundations she had built her career upon? Laura paced the small confines of her office, the walls closing in with every breath. Her mind restlessly analyzed the day's events, turning over both opportunities and obstacles. She had transformed from a hesitant presenter into a wellspring of innovative ideas, yet lingering doubts clung to her like shadows in the dim light. The bubbling excitement initiated by Sam's encouragement confronted her fears, sparking an internal battle. While the possibility of acceptance energized her, the haunting specter of Dr. Matthews' skepticism gnawed at her resolve. How could she possibly uphold her vision against such formidable critique? Was she merely an idealist, or could her aspirations actually be grounded in practical effectiveness? She settled at her desk, pushing aside the troublesome thoughts. It was time to strategize. Laura opened her laptop and began to draft her next steps. She needed to defend her methodology with proof, not just a passionate plea. The thought invigorated her, and the prospect of merging qualitative and quantitative approaches sparked a deeper commitment within her. With each keystroke, she typed out potential arguments that could counteract the skepticism expressed in the meeting. Could she gather more case studies that seamlessly blended narratives and data? Tapping into local resources and collaborating with underserved populations could yield insights that would fortify her position and show a laudable integration of methodologies. As she worked, an unexpected clarity emerged. She wasn't just defending her ideas. She was evolving them. Each new layer she added formed a more compelling narrative. In grappling with her fears, she was fortifying her approach and challenging the very constructs she had felt bound by. Laura realized that this was her chance not only to present data but to enact change, an inherent leadership opportunity. Just then, her phone chimed, and a message from Sam popped up. "Let us brainstorm together. Your ideas deserve a wider audience." His unwavering conviction acted like a warm light in the chill of uncertainty. They met at a cozy coffee shop, the clinking of cups creating an inviting atmosphere. Laura's heart raced as she poured her ideas into the conversation, gesturing animatedly while Sam listened with rapt attention. He offered suggestions that resonated with her, often pulling from his own experiences, revealing the rich tapestry of human stories that complemented data. "You've got to frame it as an evolution, Laura," Sam advised. "You're not abandoning rigor. You're enhancing it. It's about evolution, collaboration, openness to new perspectives." Each word sank deep within her, fueling her newfound conviction. With Sam's support, she meticulously crafted a plan, identifying key stakeholders who would rally behind her approach. The prospect of collaboration reinforced her belief that she was not creating merely for herself, but for a broader purpose. Back at her desk, Laura compiled her notes, transforming fragments of thoughts into actionable strategies. She would prepare a robust proposal showcasing her preliminary findings alongside qualitative data that reflected real-world applications. But as she glanced at her reflection in the window, an internal question loomed large. Was confronting Dr. Matthews in the upcoming follow-up meeting a path to professional growth, or simply a battle she might lose? The blend of fear and determination surged within her. She had come too far to retreat now. She was not just advocating for a research methodology. She was championing a new paradigm. The moment felt pivotal, charged with the potential to reshape her future. With a deep breath, she envisioned herself standing before the board again, not as the uncertain individual they might have initially seen, but as a determined innovator ready to fight for her vision. The moment of truth loomed closer, and she knew it was time to confront both the board's skepticism and her own fears head-on. Laura gathered her materials, determination settling into her bones. But would the next meeting solidify her vision as a state-of-the-art approach in research, or would it be yet another moment of reckoning? Laura tightened her grip on the proposal folder as she walked towards the conference room, each step echoing the tumult of thoughts swirling in her mind. She replayed the contents fiercely embedded in her brain. Key statistics, compelling narratives, and methodologies that would bridge the gap between qualitative insight and quantitative rigor. But doubts crept in, whispering of impending failure. What if Dr. Matthews, seated at the head of the table, dismissed her contributions as naive? Map out your approach, she reminded herself. She had prepared meticulously. Yet as she stepped through the door, a wave of vulnerability washed over her. The room was a stark contrast to her office. Polished surfaces reflecting bright overhead lights, a rectangular table emphasizing the gravity of the situation. It felt as though the air thickened, charged with anticipation. Taking a deep breath, she moved to the front of the room and set her materials down. The board members settled in, their expressions a blend of curiosity and skepticism. As she opened the presentation, she made eye contact with Sam, who was seated in the back, a reassuring nod encouraging her further. "Thank you all for being here today," she began, her voice steadying as the tension began to dissolve slightly. "I aim to present a new framework that not only addresses our goals, but also embraces an innovative integration of data and narrative." Her pulse quickened, but she launched into her arguments. Every slide was a carefully tailored tapestry woven from data, insights, and the vibrant stories of those who had lived the challenges represented in her research. She highlighted how qualitative stories could illuminate trends hidden within cold, hard numbers, and how combining these two approaches fostered deeper understanding. As the words flowed, something shifted within her. Each point resonated, not just with her intent but with her emerging voice as a leader in this field. The fear that had initially threatened to undermine her confidence transformed into an engaging energy that captivated her audience. Briefly catching Dr. Matthews' eye, she noticed a flicker of intrigue. Yet, as she moved into her conclusion, a familiar chill crept back. The culmination of her presentation contained her most vulnerable insight, the recognition that this new paradigm would require collective openness and trust, the very elements that had been lacking in previous dialogues. "True progress necessitates collaboration," she asserted, her conviction strong. "Together, we can foster an environment that encourages not just adherence to methods, but a broader exploration of possibilities." The moment hung in the air, tension palpable. Dr. Matthews, shifting in his seat, raised an eyebrow. "You speak of collaboration, but what if stakeholders are resistant to this change? What if they prefer traditional methods?" His voice was calm, but there was an edge that prickled under her skin. Laura's heart raced as she sensed the challenge. This was the duel that loomed in her mind, her advocacy laid raw and vulnerable before them. Instead of faltering, she found strength in the clarity of her purpose. Resistance is natural, But it is precisely this resistance that indicates an opportunity for dialogue. Laura replied, her voice firm. We must engage in these discussions to explore the benefits collectively. It's about understanding and enhancing existing methodologies rather than discarding them. With each word, she felt her fears shifting, transforming into an unwavering determination. The board members exchanged glances, the atmosphere charged with a dynamic tension that hinted at their shifting perspectives. The meeting concluded, and she was met with a blend of questions and validations. As the board members filed out, she felt they had witnessed something profound. Not just a new proposal, but a challenge to rethink established norms. Laura stood, breathlessly absorbing the weight of the moment. Maybe she wasn't just pushing against the tide. She was reshaping it. The path ahead was uncharted, and while doubts still flickered at the edges of her mind, there was a newfound tenacity within her. As she gathered her notes, Sam approached, eyes gleaming with pride. You did it, Laura. You set a precedent. But the real work begins now. The room, once cloaked in uncertainty, ignited possibilities. Still, an internal stir lingered questions of her next move, next steps, and the tangible intricacies of her vision. Could she build the collaborative bridge she envisioned, or were the foundational shifts she sought still out of reach? Laura realized that confronting her own fears was merely part of the journey. The real challenge lay in convincing others and creating meaningful change amidst the shadows of skepticism. With resolve refreshing her spirit, Laura prepared to traverse the complexities ahead. What alliances would she need to forge, and how would she navigate the intricacies of institutional inertia? The battlefield of ideas had only just begun. In the days following the board meeting, Laura immersed herself in the pursuit of collaborative relationships. Each conversation with her colleagues felt like a small victory, building her confidence and expanding her influence. She approached skeptics with openness, acknowledging their concerns while imbibing her vision of integration, prompting deeper discussions that began to shift mindsets among her peers. Word of her innovative approach began circulating beyond her immediate circle, as she received invitations to present her findings at various regional workshops. Each time she faced an audience, Laura transformed, shedding remnants of self-doubt. The thrill of sharing her narrative alongside her research resulted in invigorating dialogues. Attendance increased, and participation levels soared as people responded positively to her unique vantage point. In one workshop, while discussing her methodology, she encountered a researcher who had critiqued her work in the past. David had been a naysayer, often dismissing Laura's narrative-driven insights. As she explained how qualitative data contextualizes quantitative findings, she noticed David's brow furrow less aggressively and his demeanor shift, curiosity glimmering behind his disarming skepticism. Taking a leap, she invited him into a conversation about collaboration on a future research project. While I have my reservations, he admitted, your insights are starting to resonate. Perhaps there's potential in this integrated approach. His unexpected openness ignited a fire within her. Laura saw clearly that every skeptical gaze could become an ally if transformed through honest dialogue and shared goals. Meanwhile, her focus groups began yielding rich data that illuminated trends and narratives she had only glimpsed previously. Engaging with communities impacted by her research provided a fresh lens that rejuvenated her work. Stories of resilience, wrapped around hardened facts, an embodiment of the very struggle she championed. Laura began to see her work not as a solitary pursuit but as a conduit through which others could participate in the quest for understanding. The culmination of her efforts came to a head during a collaborative conference aimed at future scientific methodologies. Laura had been allotted a keynote slot, a momentous opportunity to consolidate her growth and her narrative. Standing backstage, she was reminded of the timid woman who had once quivered in front of a classroom, yearning for recognition. Now, she was on the cusp of being acknowledged not only as a researcher but as a boundary-pushing innovator. As she gripped her notes tighter, her thoughts shifted from self-doubt to the enthusiastic faces she imagined in the audience, eager to capture her insights. When her time arrived, and she stepped onto the stage, she embodied every lesson she had learned. With a commanding presence, she greeted the audience and launched into her presentation, weaving together data, stories, and the call for engagement. Science is not just about cold data. It's about the warmth of human experience driving it, she declared, her voice resonating through the auditorium. Each slide pulsed with the life and passion she had ignited within herself. By the time she concluded, the audience erupted into applause, the kind that felt like a tsunami of support washing over her, a validation she had fought to reach. Post-presentation, what followed felt surreal. Awards were presented for innovative research, and amidst the finalists was Laura's name, a symbolic acknowledgement of her growth and contributions. As she accepted the award, her hands shook, but not from fear. They trembled with gratitude and joy. The recognition felt like a collision of aspirations realized. She was no longer invisible. From then on, Laura continued collaborating with critics-turned-allies, notably David, forming interdisciplinary teams that empowered community voices in research. Together, they devised methodologies that became benchmarks in their field, illustrating the indispensability of integrating qualitative narratives with quantitative research. Their partnership exemplified the shift in academia towards inclusivity and innovation, showcasing real-world relevance. Reflecting on her journey, Laura embraced the satisfaction of personal and professional evolution. She had not only conquered her fears but had also demonstrated that vulnerability could lead to profound strength. Her story became one of resilience, courage, and transformation, a testament to what it means to claim one's space in a field historically rife with skepticism. In doing so, Laura had not only found her voice but had carved out a legacy, one that championed the intersection of science and humanity. As she stood gazing out at the universe one more time, Laura understood that she was destined to reflect the brilliance of the stars she loved, no longer bound by darkness, but glowing with the light of achievement. Now this is the moment for you. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support for transformative journeys. Comment below your reactions and theories about Laura's incredible resolution. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to hear this empowering conclusion. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of backing the channel through these actions.